welcome back to another episode of Teach MA Dude, where you're going to get all the perspective, insights, analysis, and opinion from an actual practicing Massachusetts teacher, so you know that what you're hearing is coming from someone who's dealing with these issues on the front lines and who's got kind of an idea of what he's talking about. Happy to come to you guys with another video today, and today's video is all about student discipline and cultures around discipline at school. And this is going to be talking about, in a sense, what's going on, kind of at the school level, what's going on within the building, how leaders of the buildings are handling it, kind of like going to ruminate on how it's being handled at the state level, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And also we're going to kind of get into some thoughts I have about, and this is going to be kind of controversial, what's going on at home and what really is going well and what needs to change. Because since the events of the past few years, I'm probably not the only one to say this, but discipline with the students has been at an all-time low. And it really needs to be addressed if we want to think about all these teachers who, to be honest, don't want to go into the profession or stay in the profession. The vets have had it. They're ready to call it quits, right? The people in the middle are looking at their age and saying, oh my God, how much longer until I can get out of this? It's just not good. All right, so discipline's the thought from today's video. Let's go ahead and jump on into it. So as I said in the opening bit, discipline really is something that has teachers on edge. And I'm going to tell you from firsthand experience, I definitely feel like the events of the past few years, right, since we've all gone home in 2020 due to the global event, it's really been an inflection point, right? We really saw student motivation really take a hit. And in my opinion, depending on the individuals we're talking about, it hasn't really recovered, right? And so I think as a teachers, you often are going to hear them say, we're not really, not that we don't care, but that, right, we're not going to worry about those kids so much who are the high achievers, the ones with that strong intrinsic motivation, that strong buy-in. They're going to show up and they're going to do whatever you put in front of them. And to be honest, expectations have fallen for them, but if we just push those expectations higher, they're going to be the one to rise to the occasion, especially, right? And when you think about it, one of the big expectations of teachers is high expectations, and that comes from a well understood fact that kids are going to rise to the expectations if you set them high, and they're going to lower themselves to low expectations if you set them low, right? So in our jobs, if we think about it as adults, right, if we have a boss, right, we think about that kind of like Michael Scott boss who sets their expectations really, really low, right? They try to be friendly, right? They don't ask too much of you, right? You see the kind of antics that you see in the show The Office, right? People are messing around because they don't have a boss that holds them to high expectations. And I think one of the common misconceptions that people have is the idea that, students aren't going to really like me, or students, it's going to be tough to deal with the students if I have high expectations. And to be honest, I couldn't disagree more. I actually think that students are going to respect you more if you have high expectations. And frankly, it's not about if the students like you, it's about if the students respect you, right? They need to respect you. They need you to feel that they're coming into a classroom where you expect them to learn. You have high expectations, you're going to push them hard, and you're not going to put up with their nonsense, right? And unfortunately, expectations from teachers and in general, and it's not to be blaming the teachers, have fallen significantly since the events of the past few years. I really think that a lot of it comes from this idea of this really need to be, and I hate to use buzzwords, it's like whole trauma-informed thing. Like, the kids are going through so much trauma, right? We need to, take an equitable approach where we're dealing with all the different, struggles that students are facing. And I'm going to be straight with you. Like, yes, students did face struggles in the past few years. But let me tell you something. Like, from my personal experience, I had students coming to me throughout the 2020-2021 school year, right? That first year where we're really in the midst of that nationwide, issues with education around those events, right? They said to me, I really appreciate how you'd make us come to regular, Zoom meetings during the week, how you'd post materials for us every day. I'm going to be honest, I didn't do all the materials that you put up online, but like your ability to create resources that helped me when I was stuck at home and I didn't know what was going on amidst all this uncertainty was like the most normal thing that I had. Think about that. There were students who wanted that academic challenge, rose that academic challenge, right? And that's because it was made available to them. And I think the problem is we went into schooling since that time, and I'm again, the leadership of the school, the leadership of the district sets the tone. So the tone became, again, oh, we have to be equitable. We have to respect equity. We have to be trauma informed. These students are engaging in so much trauma. And I understand that. And again, I appreciate that. But the problem is you can recognize that students are going through a lot, but you can also universally have high expectations. And so I think what happened is since coming back, we set the expectations low and we never really cranked them up. Instead of setting the expectations the same and doing more to support students who couldn't meet them. Those are two very different things. The problem is, from an educator's perspective, right, we have to work with what is being set for us. We have to work around the culture that leaders set for us. So if leaders saying, and I'll tell you, for example, my leader said, we are not going to have administrator detentions because even though we have a auditorium or a gym where we could socially distance students, we're not going to do it. It's not going to work. We're not going to. So what do you think is going to happen? Well, now if I give a student a detention for being late, why do they show up? Because what's going to happen when they don't show up? There's no administrator recourse, right? So then that in turn says to me, well, what's going to be my way of holding students accountable to be on time? I don't really have any. And then from there, students realize, well, now there's not going to be any recourse when I'm not on time. And then you get back to the dichotomy where the students who want to learn, who want to be there, who are the followers of these simple rules. And look, in life, you have to show up on time, right? The students who get that, the students who want to be there on time, and the students who respect the rules are going to show up on time. They're not going to be affected. The students who struggle most, who we're most concerned about, on the other hand, are going to be the ones who do not show up on time, and that's going to set a negative tone off the bat. In my opinion, and I've switched school districts since the beginning of these events, I haven't seen much change, right? Now, we're about to be ending the so-called emergency declaration around this issue, and I still see students, I look in the hallways, there's no sense of urgency to get to class on time. And that comes from, in my opinion, a culture set by administrators of we are not going to hold students to that high bar, and we are not going to create an atmosphere where we are cracking down. We're saying lateness to class is not acceptable. We're asking teachers to give detentions. We're holding students to be coming after school, and if not, there's going to be a problem because teachers probably don't feel that that's something that they can do because they don't feel supported in that, right? They don't feel like they have that support to be able to have those policies, and I think that's an issue, right? And again, teachers, when they engage in disciplinary action against students, do it because they want to reinforce good behaviors, right? If we think about real life, what do you need to do as an adult? You need to show up to work. You need to show up on time. You need to do what's asked of you. And when your boss asks you to do something, you don't have to like what your boss is asking you to do, but you have to respect your boss and you have to do the work that's put in front of you or you're going to be fired. If you don't like the work you're doing, get another job, right? You have the ability to do that, but you do not have the ability to give your boss attitude, right? To suck your teeth at your boss, to talk back to your boss, to talk under your breath at your boss. You can't do that. You're not going to be successful in real life. And the problem is we're creating an atmosphere in schools where we're not having the ability for teachers to really be able to push back against those behaviors, and or we have systems in place where we're trying to rationalize it, we're trying to excuse it, we're trying to use, right, these new things like, oh, what about, it could be, a matter of race, it could be a matter of gender. No, it doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter if you're proficient in English. Respect is something that happens all over the world. All different genders, all different races, all different cultures. Respect is valued. Now, different cultures do different things in response to disrespect, but respect is a universal idea, right? So I'm not really buying that. And unfortunately, I think as we've moved over the past few years further and further, I think what's been happening is we have leaders who kind of coast into their positions on this idea of, again, diversity, equity, inclusion. And I think they have the wrong idea of what that means. In my opinion, what they're doing is they're lowering the standards for everyone when instead what they could do is keep the standards the same and simply provide more support. For example, we don't want to do homework because some kids might work after school. Fine. But how many kids really fall into that thing? So instead, say, we're still going to have homework, but we're going to ask that students who work after school, if you absolutely have to do that, like you have to help feed your family, then it's your responsibility to talk with your teacher. Or maybe if you are a special ed student, work with your liaison to talk to your teacher, because that's a life skill. When you have conflicts in real life, it's your responsibility to go to your boss. It's your responsibility to handle those conflicts. All right, so I think that unfortunately these leaders are pushing cultures of low-level discipline. And this goes all the way up to the state. So in November, I believe it was 2022, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education put out guidance on discipline, saying that now schools have to do even more, right? We can't just be suspending students out of school. We have to do everything we can to keep students in the school. There's not resources for that, right? So we're going to get what? We're going to start having some big internal suspension program. Well, who's going to staff that? You're not providing resource to staff that, right? So there's all these mandates coming down saying discipline less, but not giving the resources, not giving the guidance to do it. And I think that when you have that top-down level of discipline not coming, it's not going to be helpful to moving things in a good direction. So this is just my brief take on discipline and cultures of student discipline, which I think is really leading to the degrading of the kind of activities, right? More cell phone usage, more talk back, more kind of those adverse behaviors. I don't think we can really chalk it up to trauma necessarily, but that is an impact. I think we're overplaying that. Thanks so much for watching, folks. Please feel free to like and subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful day.